Today, I want to take a look at 4 different books you may want to add to your library if you're thinking about building or renovating your darkroom. So today's a little bit more of a book review than a how-to. If you're thinking about building your first darkroom, second darkroom, third darkroom, or just renovating the one that you have, you may want to add any of these 4 books to your library. I have all 4 that I've accumulated over the years. You may find some of these in your local library. Amazon, certainly you can get them there. So let's look at what some of these books are. Now, 2 of them at least are out of print, and those are the 2 Kodak books that I'm going to show today. And that would be Photolab Design, which is a little bit more geared towards a professional commercial darkroom, but it has some good stuff for the home builder. And the Kodak Workshop series, Building a Home Darkroom. And there's several different versions or editions of this one. Mine is from, when? Clearly from the wood paneling from the 70s, 1981, so close enough. Some of the information is a little bit dated, and certainly you want to check the codes, building codes for your area, but most of this stuff is useful. Now, each of these different books cover kind of different aspects or different ways of doing certain things. The other 2 books that we're going to look at is Build Your Own Home Darkroom by Lista, Duren, and McDonald, and the new Darkroom Handbook. That would be by Joe DeMaio, Robin Worth, and Dennis Curtin. This one is interesting, and I think there may be a new edition or newer edition out there. This one's from Focal Press. This one's really good because it actually shows some darkrooms from well-known photographers such as Harry Callahan, Aaron Siskin, Bernice Abbott, and W. Eugene Smith. And then it has 4 other individual darkrooms in there as well, so you can kind of see how some of these big names had their darkrooms laid out. Not always a sense of inspiration, because if you look at W. Eugene Smith's darkroom, it is an absolute disaster area right here, and you may not want to follow his example. But both of these 2 books are really good about showing what you may want to build. So let me get to certain pages here, like your own darkroom sink, a countertop, light box, things like that. This one's a little bit more how-to step-by-step, such as what kind of screws and bolts you might want to use, making drawers for light boxes, air vents, and whatnot. So this one's a little bit more step-by-step, and it's very useful in that regard. And it's definitely meant for making your own stuff, including your own sink, plywood, and so forth. This one, the new Darkroom Handbook, doesn't necessarily have step-by-step stuff. It does have things like marking a chalk line to build walls and so forth, but it cuts some of the steps out, assuming you know how to do certain things. So it does have good diagrams for like building a sink, to make sure you get the pitch right, and so forth. So this book is pretty good, but I feel like this one may be a little bit better if you actually do intend on building your own equipment. Both of them, however, and I believe Building Your Own Home Darkroom from Kodak, have floor plan ideas. So let me skip forward to this one. No, Kodak just shows a couple of examples. Oh, if you have a 6x8 bathroom, you might want to do this. But these 2 actually have like sink cutouts. Put it on a graph paper to kind of do your own layout. This one does a similar thing. Let me find that page here. I should have marked these pages, make this a little quicker. So like a planning grid with different different sink configurations and sizes that you can cut out or copy and kind of measure. Or if you need to figure out how to make a light trap door or a sealed door, those are both very good. The Kodak one, a little bit more of this is how we made our darkroom, and it's got some good inspiration. This particular one's in a basement, so it talks about like, or an unfinished basement at that. So building and covering the walls, light proofing, building some drying racks, which use a different system than the others. So it's got some good information in there. Photolab design is a little bit different. It's, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit more geared towards commercial darkroom. So it has some in the back, like possible layouts, but these are for like a portrait or commercial studio, a university, which includes classroom space. So that may not necessarily be what you're looking for, but it does talk about certain things such as ventilation, shows some good examples of professional layout, and one of the things that I thought was very interesting in here that the others don't necessarily show is good ventilation, where placement is, how you should figure the quantity of illumination or ventilation and so forth. And then there's a smaller version, I don't have that one up here to show you, that goes over different methods of constructing your sink. So the Build Your Own Home Darkrooms book shows how to build one out of plywood and then painting it with marine grade paint. Very useful if you're going to have to build your own. The Kodak one here assumes you're going to buy a plastic sink. The Photolab design and its smaller brother, which is also a very useful book, looks at building one out of different materials, and if you're going to make a metal one yourself and you don't have stainless, what can you use and what shouldn't you use? So they show one that's lead lined, but kind of dated, since lead poisoning may be an issue that you're concerned about. Different kinds of stone, different kinds of wood and materials. So if you can get a hold of that one, it works as well. So this one's more of a layout, practical layout sort of book. This one's more of a build a darkroom out of a particular room. Here's how we did it. This one's really good for if you need to build a sink and a cabinet and a stand for your enlarger. This is going to show you the step-by-step, as well as cut lines for your plywood. And then this one's trying to be a mix of all of that, as well as show you examples of other photographers' darkrooms, which can be very useful. And then it gives some basics on building things, but mostly it's like, let's look at this page where it talks about safe lights. Here are different kinds of safe lights, and here's where you might want to put them, and that's it. So if you're not sure what you need to get, this one has kind of a list through, and it's organized pretty well, where it starts like, where would you start in the darkroom? You start with the enlarger, and then you would move to the sink, then you would move to the drying racks, then you would move to spotting and framing. So it moves in that sort of progression. The others not organized quite that well. So any of these 4 books, I think if you're going to build your own darkroom, particularly these 2, very useful. But don't discount these for your own library. They do have very useful information, and they think about it from a slightly different perspective than the other 2. So I would, if your budget allows and you can find them, get all 4, because you may find useful information from all of it. I know I did for my own darkroom. I didn't build my sink, but the sink stand I did. So I used kind of this inspiration for that, getting cabinets from Lowe's, and then using this book for the actual box, this part here, which is a full box that I built, pitched and everything like that to put on top of the cabinets, as well as all of the storage in between, which you can see in one of my earlier videos. And then my drying screens, I used this book to kind of go over how I wanted to use canvas stretcher bar. Get that back in there. Use the canvas stretcher bar for the frame as opposed to like window screens and things such as that. Now, I didn't have to worry about anything for the enlarger because it's a free-standing, floor-standing model. But when it came to like the plumbing, I followed one of these books and it gave some really great, useful information. So if you're looking to build, if you're looking to renovate, these are great sources of reference. In fact, I'm going to be using this one a little bit more to make some duck boards here in the future. Although I did look at the solution from this Kodak book as a consideration, which, if I can find the right page here, and here where they're using fiberglass corrugated roofing as a duck board. So maybe I'll look at that instead, because I can get that at Lowe's really cheap and just cut it to size. As opposed to something like this, which is building duckboard out of a lighting vent or a diffuser for fluorescent light, or building something out of wood, or maybe out of a wire rack shelf. So when I get to that, we'll discuss options such as that. And build one and make a video out of it. But these books certainly give me multiple sources of inspiration to do so. So great sources of information, good references to have. I highly recommend that you add at least one, but if you can, all 4 of those to your library. Even if you already have your darkroom, they may give you ideas for how to make it more efficient for your use of space. So thanks again for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what source you used for your darkroom, and we will see you next time.